Well, staying with the war in Ukraine, more than 2 years into Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukrainian troops are dug in for a long war of attrition. And the next generation is getting ready. DW's Amien Essif has visited a group of young Ukrainians practicing the basic skills they may need to defend their country.
A commander distributes rifles to the separate tactical group. Replicas, that is. The troops here are only teenagers, some not even that old yet. This is an after-school club for the kids of Shepetivka in western Ukraine. They meet 3 times a week to prepare for life in a country at war. Olena Drachuk, a junior sergeant in an air defense unit, is the only adult here. She founded the program in 2015 with funding from donations, grants, and the local government. After Russia launched its full-scale invasion in 2022, the club's activities took on a new urgency. But Olena says her mission is bigger than just training future soldiers.
Today, you want to invest a maximum in bringing up this generation, because the future depends on them. Only if they correctly understand who they are, that they are citizens of Ukraine, that they are needed here, that they can develop the country. Only then will there be a future here.
Olena acts mostly as a supervisor as the older kids teach the younger ones hard military skills, like how to assemble a real Kalashnikov. They use wooden rifles for the drills, but there's no playing around. They're fully aware that their life may someday depend on this training. They enforce discipline and relish difficult conditions, like the brief downpour that drenches the field today. 16-year-old Danilo is one that the younger kids look up to. Both his parents serve in the military, and he's committed to doing the same.
As for whether I'm ready to go and fight on the front line, in the hot spots, I think so, yes. For one thing, because this is my duty as a citizen of Ukraine. I've gained basic skills here that will help me in my training in the future and help me push the enemy out of our country.
At 12, Stepan is the second youngest in the group. He hopes to take a different route.
Do you think you'd ever want to be a soldier?
Anything can happen. But I want to study for a civilian job.
There are hundreds of youth groups like this in Ukraine, and that number has grown significantly since the full-scale invasion. That's according to the Youth and Sports Ministry, which provides direct financial support to the larger ones. In the last 2 years, the ministry held conferences for youth groups across the country that involved 74,000 young people.
Now in Ukraine is a time of internal reflection. And these days, parents are rethinking the question of how to raise their children so that they are citizens of an independent and capable country.
After 2 hours of exercises, spirits are high. But the walls are covered with sobering reminders of the war. These young men are graduates of the program who have died on the front lines. Several other graduates are still there fighting.
I worry. When we chat, I know they can't immediately go online and read my messages. But I'm always checking the messages to see if they've read what I sent, whether they've been online, whether everyone is there. They don't all answer right away. But if they read the messages, then everything is fine.
As they change back into their civilian clothes, members of the separate tactical group are just kids once again. Some of them still have 5 or 6 years before they become adults and have to make adult decisions. For others, that milestone is just a few months away.
Marina Miron is a military analyst in the War Studies Department at King's College London. Welcome back to DW, Marina. How does someone who studies war and military tactics like yourself view a story like this? Teenagers, even a 12-year-old, learning how to assemble machine guns and maybe to fight.
Good evening, Phil. Well, I have looked at wars around the world, and certainly there are countries which do resort to using child soldiers, unfortunately enough. But from a Western perspective, it's certainly a very desperate way of preparing your country for a war. And that speaks volumes because Ukraine is lacking manpower. We've heard the issues that have been caused by the new draft law. We have heard that women will be mobilized as well, or are being mobilized. And now we're seeing children being prepared, being accustomed. So unfortunately, this is a sad reality. And I think it should give us all a moment to think about how our world is evolving and where we're going.
And Russia, at the moment, appears not to be having problems enlisting cannon fodder, as it were, for this battle, because one of the Russian tactics just seems to be throw men at it.
Well, not all Russian tactics involve using massive manpower as it is. However, the Russians have changed their system in terms of offering a very good sum to those who are willing to volunteer and go and fight in Ukraine. And they get bonuses for destroying Western equipment or for killing Ukrainian soldiers. So it's quite an attractive way to get people to fight. And of course, we have to understand that both Ukraine and Russia, they have been preparing their populations in terms of designing the information spectrum in such a way that people would be supporting whatever the respective governments or their politicians are doing. So right. I think for the Russian case, it's working out quite well now.
And the G7 meeting today, of course, one of the possibilities to come out of this conference in Italy is a 10-year bilateral security agreement with the United States and a deal with Japan also likely. What do you think is likely to be in those?
Well, I don't want to take any guesses. What I'm thinking is that there is an attempt to ensure that Ukraine has the necessary financial aid. And it was estimated that over the course of 10 years, it would be needing some $486 billion for reconstruction. And this is an important point because we don't know when the war will end, but whichever way it will end, Ukraine will need money for reconstructing the country. And I think that is one of the aspects that needs to be addressed straight away. And I think that's what the G7 leaders are trying to do when discussing on how to proceed with the frozen assets. And of course, what needs to be ensured is that Ukraine has continued support regarding of the political climate and regarding of all the elections and the shift that we have been seeing since the European parliamentary election, that this aid to Ukraine can withstand all the turbulences, so to say. And the other pillar would be, of course, provision of military aid, because money, as it is, cannot be readily turned around into military equipment. We have seen that with artillery shells, for instance. So I think those are the things that should be or will be most likely the priority.
OK, thank you for that. We're grateful as ever. Military analyst Marina Miron from King's College London.
Thank you for having me.